Oh, there's even like a private chat session.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Hello. Happy Thursday. Welcome to our Purse Strings Facebook Live. Today we're here with John Agee, and we are going to talk about bookkeeping and how to make bookkeeping easier. For those who don't know, we are Purse Strings. We are here to provide financial education, to get those wheels turning, to get some of those questions answered. But when you need a professional to put things in transition or transaction, we have top tier financial professionals who are willing, ready, and able to serve the female market. And John is great. I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs
Yeah,
because you are a bookkeeper, which is great. So, John, we are so excited to have you here today.
awesome. Well, I'd like to introduce a little bit more about me, kind of how I
Oh,
got started
please,
into this. Um,
please.
and it's so interesting what you do when you're younger. You never think you're going to be where you're at today. So I actually started doing accounting in high school, believe it or not. They had this wonderful vocational program. I was one of like three students in it. And by the end of it, I had an accounting certificate. I'm like, well, what do I do with this? Well, then I just went back to school. Um, and what I went back to school for was just straight business admin. I did my 4 years at JC, 2 years at a private. And for a full 10 years while doing that and trying to figure out what I really wanted to get into, I had tutored accounting, econ, all those, core business courses for about those 10 years. And
You were
I
tutoring that on the side?
exactly. Well, I did it on the side and I did it at a local JC of mine, Chiefy College. So I did that for like 6 years through them, 4 years on my own. So it's kind of like a little entrepreneur on the side as well, like, butting into my own area. And at the same time, I'm like, I don't really see myself scaling beyond tutoring one on one. Like, that's a lot of work for one person to do. That's not a business, right? I'm like, well, what do I do from here? Like, what can I do? I'm trying to figure things out. I got my degree. Nothing's happening in the market right now. It hasn't been the best market since I graduated. And oddly enough, my boyfriend at the time, his family went through a terrible audit and they failed
Mm.
it. And they had all these penalties and fines. And they're like, you know what, John, I really need your help. We have the family business, as you know. My husband goes out, he does all the bids, all the
Mhm.
jobs, and then he comes back, dumps it all on the desk, and then I have to do it. And it's a lot of work for me. And I'm a full time teacher with after school curriculum that I do with students. I'm like, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You sound like you're stressed. She's like, yeah, just I need your help. So I'm like, you know what? Do I know enough in accounting to do this? Like I've done it for like 10 years at this point, and I'm still questioning, do I have enough real world experience for this? And so I go back to college again. I take a tax course because obviously there are tax implications here. They failed the
Right.
audit. Um, Payroll. I did QuickBooks for bookkeeping and a general bookkeeping course because I'm like, what is it like in the real world? And I knew everything already that I needed to know for the most part. And from there I took studying and working for a CPA for a year just to get my feet wet a bit, and then I just dove out on my own. And
Good
so
for
4 years
you.
now in business, thank you. And we're a team of three, and we're looking to grow to a team of four this year. Slow but steady progress, and it's been really exciting. So yeah, that's
That-
just a bit about me.
I love it. I love it a lot. And, it's when we talk about entrepreneurship a lot, it's finding that zone of genius, and some people
Mhm.
say, I don't want to monetize my hobby or or the thing I'm good at, but it's like work doesn't have to be hard. Like clearly this
Yeah,
came naturally to you. If you could,
exactly.
I mean, if you could just do that, I'd pray to all those tutors because man, I was in there. I was your student. Um, but yeah, if that comes easy to you, that's your calling for sure.
Yeah, I
Um,
truly believe that too.
Definitely. So I am. It sounds like you have had years of experience. You know your stuff. So today you're going to give us 5 things that can kind of make
Exactly.
bookkeeping easier. Um,
Exactly.
so let's just dive in. Let's start with
Yeah.
tip number one.
So I mean, I don't really have these out in tips, but I want to go over the problems that you're seeing that
Okay,
kind of like lead you into why you should be doing these things too. And then I'll give you a full list right at the end. Um,
perfect.
so as business owners, right, we usually want to tackle our own bookkeeping when we're starting out. And that's great because, we don't have a lot of capital going on. We don't have very many transactions. We're still trying to get our feet wet in the industry. And at the end of the day, our viewpoint on those transactions are, well, they're just transactions in a bank account. And we're right about that. But there can be accounting and tax concepts that revolve around those that make it more challenging. And while we don't need to focus on that, we do need a system to organize that information to make it easier for the people who do if we don't handle it at the end of the year. So part of that being tip number one, get organized with your transactions. Make sure you get a bank account or a credit card account where all your business transactions will go through that account, and you're not commingling your personal transactions in there. Because ideally, you want to be able to say, look, 4 years from now, when I'm operating my business, if I were to look back, can I identify what this transaction was for or have a good idea of it? Because that's what the IRS is going to do if they audit you, right? Because they're not going to audit you next year for last year. They never do that. They always wait till the last possible moment, which is like 4 years from now. And they say, hey, look, what was this for? And if you don't have a good answer, or like you're going to Target for groceries and you're going to Target for, office supplies, and you're mixing that, how do they discern that that is different? They're going to say, no, 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 you went for groceries. And now it's up to you to prove it. So if you start clean from the get-go, everything's just straight for the business, you're going to avoid all those problems. And when it comes time for you to hand off all those books, when you're growing to a professional or someone in-house that you trust, they will know that everything in there isn't for you. It's specifically for the business. And so it'll keep a lot of issues from popping up where they're like, well, I thought, I didn't think that was a lunch for you and your husband, or, I thought that was a client meeting, or I thought, that was part of the employee service luncheon that you had. It removes those questions on whether or not it was for the business.
Definitely. It's a huge thing you should do right from the start. Because there are two different things. There's you, and then there's the business. So you just charge it as two different ways. Keep it clean from the beginning. I love that. That's a great piece of advice for anybody at any point. Make sure those are separated.
Exactly. And that leads me into my next point. If you have a bank account that's just strictly dedicated, it makes doing the accounting work so much easier. So for instance, ideally you want to find software that is very comfortable for you, something that feels simple, right? Ideally, you know enough about it not to be too dangerous for yourself, right? Because we can tend to get ourselves into those situations. But you want it to be something that at least connects to your bank, and ideally that connects to your sales system if it's not all in one, right? So like if you're in e-commerce, if you're just a service-based consultant, if you're providing service on site, or you've been doing stuff like construction work, or doing restaurant services, you want something that kind of matches you on both sales and bookkeeping. Even if they don't talk to each other, just the ability to have the option of pulling that in is most ideal, because when it comes to you entering in information, you don't want to spend a lot of time sitting there typing in every single receipt, right? It doesn't become reasonable for you to spend that kind of time. Like anybody can do that, right?
We'll talk about manual error.
Exactly, right? That's like before we even get to the issue, the time cost alone is substantial, right?
Yeah.
And something like a restaurant, are you really going to want to sit there and enter in 100, 200 tickets a night?
No.
No, that's insane, right? You're just going to be like, look, let's just look at the bank account, right? And sometimes that is enough for a business to just look at the bank account. If you're getting that software, just to throw out a few examples on what people can use, QuickBooks has been a great resource for many decades. Xero is another good online platform. I believe there's one called FreshBooks as well that also integrates. So those are good options. And in worst case scenario, you're not comfortable with that and you're comfortable with Excel, dump it into Excel. Worst case scenario, at least you're organized with information in one spot. So when you get to your CPA, you get to your tax professional and you say, look, this is what I did for the year. They know what they're looking at. And if they have questions, you should be able to answer that, right? So that's the second part. Just get a software that ideally eliminates any type of manual entry. Make sure it's automated. Make sure you're comfortable with it to a certain degree.
Yeah, if you're going to ever have to dive back into any of those paperwork, just keep it clean, keep your own books, and then keep it separated. Keep it in those Excel spreadsheets or in a that way it's all straightened out. That's
exactly. Because, I did mention audits before, right? So ideally, not only can you leverage the reporting in like QuickBooks and Xero, right? You're not going to be able to leverage any type of reporting in Excel unless you make it yourself. And what you make yourself may not be the best types of financial statements for you to read, but it's something rather than nothing. And
why
you want to
reinvent
avoid,
the wheel, though?
Yeah, right. So like you maximize your time using the resources you have.
Right.
And that kind of like puts that puts me to my third point, right? So you want to set time aside every week to do your bookkeeping activities. Now, as business owners, we get like really busy. So like my day to day, I'm not working on my books. Like I don't spend time on my books 8 to 5. I do that on the weekends or I do that after the 5. And that's kind of like on the side while I'm having dinner. So set time aside for yourself. It can be 15, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever you think it will take, at least once a week. At
Yeah.
least once a week. And if you miss it once, as long as you're streamlined, it's not going to take you more than 5 or 10 minutes. But if you've set aside an hour, you can use the other 45, 50 minutes to do the strategy portion of your business. Say, look, this is my P&L. This is what I made last month. This is what I made the month before. My trends are up. This is good. I need to keep doing what I'm doing. Or on the downside, you look at it, you're starting to trend down. Why am I trending down? Well, there's been disruption in the market. Okay, so how do I deal with that, right? So you can get to it from a strategy perspective once you actually set that time aside to dedicate in and on your business rather than working on the sales aspect.
It's so important to know your numbers and just to know what's going on in your business because we work so hard every day for it. We might as well just see what's going on now and then, see if it's working at all and making us some money.
Exactly. And then the other part about being organized too, I think I kind of touched up upon it, is that I hate receipts. You probably hate all that paperwork too, which is
Oh.
why having your bank account is great, but you're still going to get a receipt anyways. And so traditionally, we're taught keep every single receipt you get, put it aside, make sure it gets recorded. But if you have your dedicated bank account, it's already in there. And
Hmm.
so what you want to do is save your receipts that matter, anything over $75. Make a spot on your desk. It can be an envelope. It can be a shoebox. Like that's typically what is brought to me, just a box, some sort of container, an envelope even, where you just dump your receipts in there and say, look, this is what I did for the year. Hand it off to your professional if you need to. Look through it yourself if that's what you do. And say, look, is anything in here that I missed? And
Hmm.
usually it's really easy to identify, even if you're sorting it later, right? Because you'll have a card number that's used, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's for my business, so I can ignore these. But
Right.
something that isolates those where you just dump it and then, okay, get a new one at the beginning of the year, it's so much easier than scrambling and trying to add all those in.
Definitely. And so $75 is like the key number. You should kind of keep it about like,
It is. And that's only from a court ruling. There are
okay.
different arguments to be made, but that's like the general IRS ruling. I will, however, say that if you're consistent in your use of your business bank account, the rule may not apply to you as long as you've been consistent for many years. The other thing is, um, unless it's like an asset purchase, the use of that receipt becomes less valuable the more you build that history on your account for your business. So, like,
Okay.
say you do Starbucks meetings, right? And you're paying for your coffee, you're paying for the client's coffee, and you do this twice a week, right? You created a history, you've created a pattern. Obviously, it's under $75 in this case, right? But
Right.
this is the normal mode of business for you, right? It's going to happen. You created a history over 3 or 4 years. You're getting audited. They ask you the question. You say, look, this is what I always do. This is part of my marketing advertising. This is how I get my business. They
Right.
can't really push against that. Now, on
Right.
the other side, the higher ticket items over $75 is usually going to be like insurance, your rent, right?
Hmm.
You usually have agreements in place that are your receipts effectively, right? They don't
Right.
always email or mail you a receipt on those. So that is your other source document that says, look, this is a qualified expense. You can't say it's not. I need this to run my business. If I don't have insurance, I can't operate and open my doors tomorrow, right?
Right.
So it kind of like kicks those questions aside as long as you have the right type of documentation.
Interesting. That's a great fact to know. I never knew that was
Yeah.
the key number, but perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
it took me a while to figure that out because, like I said, when I started out, it was always keep everything, right?
Hmm.
Every single little thing you do, you need to record it. But as I learned under my CPA and as I've worked in this business with other CPAs, it's been very clear that, that just at the end of the day, that doesn't matter as much as it does for those big ticket items. Because
Right.
IRS isn't going to care as much unless it's like a commodity or something like a restaurant where they want to argue.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah,
Makes a ton of sense.
it does.
So what is the last tip that you have for us today?
Um, So I get a lot of clients, or I've at least had a lot of prospective clients, where they get into a lot of trouble from having done it themselves, or like me having graduated, right? And I was approached to do their books. They'll get someone they know in the family, a relative that they can trust to do it for them. And they'll be in college, just graduated, have no experience, and they don't know what they're doing. And they make a blunder. Or they're really good at what they're doing and they don't know how to explain it to you. So you feel like something is wrong and you don't know
Mm,
what it is. So that fifth tip is to get somebody who knows what they're doing, a professional who can explain things to you, or even just like an outside coursework that explains how things work based on the system that you're running for your business.
yeah.
And it kind of avoids all those issues. It gives you a nice level of check and balance where if you are using that relative, you know that they're good, or if you are using them and you know that they're making errors, you can get them one, training if that's what you want to do, and two, it gives you another opportunity where if they're not interested to keep working in the business with you like that, it lets them move out and you bring in a professional that can handle that work and go ahead and fix those errors for you.
That's a great example because we have seen and we've all tried something where we don't think we need somebody else to help us, and
Oh
it
man,
just turns into it cost us more in the end
it
just to
does.
get everything cleaned up and then onto somebody else than it would have just hiring somebody from the start sometimes.
Exactly.
And so we have to know what our sweet spot is and what really
Mhm.
should be handed off to somebody with a better expertise.
Exactly.
Uh,
And I do want to put a cautionary tale in there because I just had this conversation yesterday with the new consult. Um, don't put all your financial work in under one roof. So, for instances, you may have a CPA that will do your bookkeeping, your payroll, and your tax filing. Split that up. Don't let
hmm,
them do the bookkeeping if they're going to be your tax professional. Maybe they're a payroll, but ideally, your tax professional is your tax professional, and your bookkeeper is your bookkeeper. Your payroll specialist is your payroll specialist, because there's no check and balance. So the
mm-hmm,
consult that I had yesterday, she had everything in one roof. She had no documentation for her payroll. She had her tax return, but she didn't have supporting documentation for it. So
mm-hmm.
when we went over everything to say, hey, look, why is there an issue? Why is there a disconnect between your tax return and the records that you have now? We saw lots of gaps. And if you have those gaps and everything's under one roof, you're not going to get the explanation you want.
Right,
It's going to be a long time before you get any type of documentation.
right.
And if you have it separated, you can actually get checks and balances, because when I'm working with CPAs and I present something and they have a question, they'll be like, well, why do we have like so many accounts receivables, or whatever is sticking out to them at that moment, or why is it a certain way? I can explain to them what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're going back and forth. And if they start pushing something like part of the conversation where, look, we want to add this on, and I say, no, 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 that's not what the client has said. It needs to be this method.
Right.
They'll push that method. So we check each other. But like I said, if it's under one roof, you're not going to get that.
Definitely. And there's nothing better than having two eyes on everything. I mean,
Exactly.
it proves that everything's good and maybe you're getting your best savings,
Right.
as well, or whatever tips and tricks each professional has. But it makes sense that you do want all the work to be double checked and make sure
Mhm.
everyone's staying in their lane and doing everything
Exactly.
properly. Yeah, I mean, it's true life. Things happen out there. It sucks, but it's true. And so we just got to make sure everything's being done properly. So that's a great tip to kind of separate those for sure.
Let's see.
Um, so let's just walk back over. We'll just go over real quick the 5 points. Did you want to do you want to
Uh,
go over them?
sure. So pick a dedicated business card. That's your first one. Make sure no personal items are on there. Two, pick a software that you're comfortable with that can help you automate everything that you're doing. Three, pick a time at least once a week, 15, 30 minutes an hour, ideally not during your workday, where you can work on your books. Four, get a designated spot where you can just dump your receipts. And five, have a professional that you can ask questions to that can help you out with your financials or your day-to-day bookkeeping, whatever it needs for you.
Perfect. I think bookkeeping just got a whole lot easier. Um, These are some very helpful tips, especially, I mean, really anybody, because we all have, as business owners, we
Yeah.
all have to do our books. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate, John, you coming on today. And so, what is the best way for people to reach out to you if they're interested in you helping keep their books in order?
Well, two ways. One by email. You can reach me at info@yourbks.com, or two, you can shoot me a quick text or call me at 714-694-3876. Either one works. They're both handy on my workstation, so I check it frequently.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We're going to be here all month talking about entrepreneurship and some different tips and tricks to help you along the way. And so we'll see everyone here again next week. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks so much, Maggie. Bye.